Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to Excel Snippet, and I'm very happy that people are responding to my channel, and I have touched 200 plus subscribers. To celebrate this moment, I just released a new series called Excel Marathon series, and in this series, we're going to learn anything and everything in a detailed mode possible. And today, I started with the most or well-known feature of Excel called pivot table, and in here I am introducing the pivot table from basics and what to do and what not to do, and until a dashboard which allows you to interactively use the dashboard better. I've used a very simple logics here, but the program goes around 1 hour 10 minutes totally. And we are welcoming back pivot tables shortcut key Alt ENVT one more time again. And now in 2016 version, or if you have a version Office 365 which is version number 2012 and so on, then you will see not Alt NV anymore, you will see Alt NVT as your keyboard shortcut for the pivot table. Without further ado, we will kickstart our point. I took a class to one of my students called Aman, and here I'm adding the video that I took for him for almost an hour and a half plus, but I've adjusted the time a little bit and I've made it as 1 hour 10 minutes to complete it. Hope you'll enjoy this video and learn how to use pivot table effectively from now on. Let's watch the video. For Excel, they know two things in common. The first one is VLOOKUP, because that's what they do use a lot. And then the next part that they come to know is the term called pivot table. So what is a pivot table? What pivot table actually does for us? So normally if you ask me to talk about pivot table and I want to do a one-liner for pivot table, then I'll literally say that calculation of criteria. This is what I will term pivot table as. So if you are asking me to get a report out of a columnar database, that can be done much faster and much perfectly by pivot table. But when you are creating a pivot table, you have to keep in your mind that you have to follow certain basic logics that allows you to make the pivot table a perfect point. Many people used to tell me that when I do something, my pivot table is not coming, but when you do it, it is coming correctly. How? The reason is very simple. I follow 3 steps, which allows me to make sure that my pivot table stays intact.
Okay.
So, what are the golden rules that I have to remember? So, the first part is heading is must. So, without a header, I cannot or I may not able to create a proper pivot table, because I need to have headers in every columnar data that I have here. That is the first thing that I have to remember. Without a header, the problem that I will have it, the pivot table will still work. I will not say that it won't work. The problem that we will face is we will lose one data out of our precious data, because my first line item of my data will become a header for me, and the rest of them will become a data for me. And that won't make a sense if I use the first line item of my data as a header, because it's going to give a pathetic idea about what's going to happen there. So I don't know what kind of a data that I will get into, and I will get a very messy data, and I don't have a header. And the next part that I will keep in my mind is I need a proper data set. What do you mean by a proper data set? So no blank here in the pivot table, and if possible, no blank even in the data. But no blank in the even the data is a little over enthusiastic or over ambitious to ask, because if my data has nothing to do with it, or in a particular day I don't have a sale at all, they have mentioned the logics here, but they didn't fill any values for that particular region or that particular sales rep or that particular customer and so on. They expect a sale today, but unfortunately that sale hasn't happened on that day. Means I will not have that line item at all, or I'll be having a blank line item. Again, if possible, the blank, no blanks in even the data part is a little too much to ask in a normal raw data, but it's quite possible. So it's not that we definitely have to have a blank data in our data point. If it is blank and if it doesn't make any sense, then the data line item has no role to play in pivot table. So I can literally delete it.
Okay.
But again, I will see that how it's going to go forward. So if uh, data has a blank, so if the blanks is happening either on one part of the data, because I have one part which I can use, but the other part I may not be able to use it, then what I'll do is I will either add a 0, or if possible, I will delete the entire line item. So these are the 3 rules that I keep in my mind whenever I build a pivot table.
Okay. So, with regards to blank, suppose
Yep.
if we are creating any pivot table where there are a lot of data and it's month wise, and
Okay.
suppose in quite like 2 or 3 months we have the data, but we have some particulars in row which does not configure for that particular month. For
Okay.
example, like we say the sales in 5 cities as a row,
Okay.
and the
Okay.
5 cities don't have two cities don't have any sales in the particular 2 months out of 12 months. So
Okay.
there
Then when I
should
join it,
there will
that's what we will see when we go to a Power Query, because I have 5 sheets for 5 different cities. All the 5 cities are trying to make a sales. 3 cities have accomplished it. 2 cities didn't made a sale during that day or that particular week or that particular month, or maybe even a quarter. Then when I merge the data, I will not take the data where I don't have sales. So because I'm going to deal with the data point, generally when a pivot table comes into play, they'll say that sales report for the last 5 months for the last 5 regions. This is the question that they ask you. If you have a sale, you're going to add the sales value. If you don't have a sales, whatever the sales has happened during the period can be considered into the data part. Anyway, probably when we go forward for that list, we will come to know it even better.
okay, okay,
Let me take a raw data. I'm going to create some dummy data right now, so which is nowhere related to any of the list, but I'm going to use the pivot table and I'm going to use 3 logics in it. The first logic that I will try to do in here is I will add a pivot table. And once I've added the pivot table, what next I'm going to do is I'm going to create a chart out of it. And finally, I will use a slicer to make my life even more better. So these are the 3 logics that I wish to have it. So first I will create a pivot table. Then I'm going to use a pivot chart to build them better. And I'm going to use a slicer. So these are the 3 steps that I will normally create in a pivot table. So that allows me to get a report, uh, a much fine-tuned one, and it is more readable than just a columnar data that I have here. Let's see how to do that. So I'm going to create a pivot table right now. So for that, I need a table first. So I'm going to create a date and a sales. Let me add a date here. So I'm going to just come down here. And I'm going to add a date here. So I'm going to say on 1 2020. And then I'm going to add some 15 days break for sales. So I have around 9 months of sales here. And then
okay.
I'm adding some values here. And again, it's all dummy data. I'm not dealing with anything very specifically here. So I'm just trying to make sure that I get a data which is a little different and which is
Hello.
So now I got the list. I'm going to copy
Yeah.
and paste below. Just a minute, Aman. Different versions. Then the keyboard shortcuts and the way in which the data brings in the data inside is different. If I'm using 2003 version, then my keyboard shortcut will be Alt D. If I'm using 2007 or 10, then I will use Alt NVT. And if I'm using any version above than this, any one of this list. So Alt ENV will do. If I use these shortcuts, I can see two different ways. Again, these two shortcuts will not work if you're using latest version, because when I type Alt NV, my pivot table will pop up. So I can either use the first keyboard shortcut, which will look a little different, and I can use any of these shortcuts here. So let me just use one. I'm going to place the cursor anywhere in the dot data. I'm going to say Alt D. Now this is the wizard that you will get when you're using 2003 and below versions. You can take the data from the list, or you can take it from an external source, and take it from a consolidated ranges also. You can either create a pivot table or a pivot report or a chart, I can call it. This is one way we can do it. If I'm using the latest version, then I'm going to say Alt NV. Then I'm giving Alt NVT, and you can see that this is giving you a list here. Alt N. Okay, this Office 365 is again back with this shortcut.
Okay.
So I'm using Office 365 right now. So when I go back to my account, I'm using 365 Enterprises, and I'm using 2012 version here. When I use the keyboard shortcut, it's not using the way in which I use Alt NV will give you the pivot table. Now it's giving you Alt NVT has to be done, because you take this data to a Power Pivot or a Power BI desktop directly from Excel. We have another now option. We have an option that allows to do that. So now I can either create a pivot table in the same sheet or in a brand new sheet. It is up to us what we want to do with it. Generally, when we are working with the pivot table, we always keep the pivot table separately from our data part. My data will be in separate point, and my pivot table will be available in the other way around. So now I wish to put them in one sheet so that I can show you how good the data is becoming better. So I'm going to place in the existing sheet, I'm going to add the pivot table somewhere over here. Then I'm going to continue with what I'm going to do. When I give an OK, you can see automatically it gives you a list here. Immediately once you get a pivot table here, you can see that I have a pivot table analysis table comes in place, and a design table on top. And you can see on the right hand side, I have a pivot table field list, which gives you both the data that I had in my data part. So date and then the sales. And the data point now it is given this way. So normally pivot table comes like this. So you will see the data is coming on top, and you have 4 fields below at the bottom. I'm not going to go too deep into it at the moment, but this will be useful for us as we go forward with other data. So I'm going to just click this. You can see that I can change the settings to this way, or I can see only the fields that I want. I can see only the areas that I want to add, and I can see the areas on a different point. So I preferably try to keep the first one. The second one is far more easier because I have more. If the data are more, I have a lot of columns of data comes in place. Probably the second option of dealing with the pivot table fields are far better for me. I preferably use that as a list.
Okay.
In our older version, we used. Sorry.
That was the classic one, right?
No, classic is something which comes only when you use an Alt DP. So for example, now let me close this and let me delete this pivot table itself. Now I'm going to use the older version, Alt DP. This is the classic version of it. So when I say I want to have the data point in here, the range is this. And then I'm going to go next. Then it'll ask you where you want to add the sheet. I'm going to say an existing sheet, put it somewhere over here. When I give a finish here, now this is the classic mode. Again, the classic mode can be brought in here. I'll give a right click here. When you go to pivot table option, you still have the classic mode comes into play. When I go to display, I can see classic pivot table. So the classic pivot table will be like this.
What's the difference between the classic and the new version?
Classic pivot table, we will drag and drop the fields here. In non-classic component, when you give a check mark, because now I give a check mark here, probably now it is working for me, but this will not work in our older versions. And classic pivot table will give you a lot of things here. You can see the title filters coming up on top, and you can use the column part here. And this will be automatically in a particular dimension that it will go for the outline mode or tabular mode by default.
Okay.
So now when I click this plus, you can see the dates are coming in the next column. That's the difference when I have a classic mode here. So when I remove this to a normal mode, so when I come back to the pivot table point and display, I uncheck the classic mode. So now the data are still in that list. So I'm going to say compact mode means then the date column will disappear because there'll be a part of your January below, not a separate column will come into play. In a classic mode, my report layout will always be in tabular form, so you can see something else. So that's the difference between these two. So now I want to add my pivot table here. So how I add the pivot table is I'll add the dates here. When I click the dates, automatically the months will also come into play. This will not happen in the older version of pivot table until 2010. I have to group them so that I will get the months here. Or else by default, my answer will be like this. You will only see a date field coming up here, not the month field here. And when I check the sales here, it automatically goes to the value field and it gives you the sum of sales by default. In the latest version, that is in after 2013 version, and you can see that it auto groups the value here for us and you will get the months also by default. Normally this will not come there. What we will do is we'll give a right click here and we'll go to group and then we will add the months here. So normally this is what the data will be there when you normally go to a pivot table. So what we will do is we'll come here, we'll go for the group and then we will add the days here. And if you want a quarter, you can add a quarter. If you want a year, you can add a year. If you have more information like a hour, minute, and seconds, then you can add all of them. So when I give an OK right now, now you can see that my table comes in a very different way. I have year, quarter, first quarter data, second quarter data, third quarter data, and so on. And whatever I want to feed in here, or whatever I want to show in here, I can show them here very clearly. So now if I feel like I want only the monthly sales to be added here, because I'm dealing with only 1 year of data. I don't need other quarter or year or something like that now. Probably I can uncheck the year and the date here, so that gives you very clean data part for us. And it shows a pivot table in a neat and tidy manner. Once I add a pivot table, I need to do a lot of corrections here because certain things are a little pathetic. I want to make them look better. So it shows that the row label as a header, but I want this to be a quarter or something else. To convert this into a proper point, I'll come back to my list here. And when I click the tabular form, now you can see it breaks into two different columns, as a quarter and month and the sales. If I feel that I want quarter-wise sales here, so I can uncheck the months here. It gives you quarter 1, quarter 2, quarter 3 sales for me. And I will make the data look even more better. So I'm going to select any one of the cell in the list here. Then give a right click. I'll go to value field settings. And the number format, I can change it to an accounting or currency of purpose. Now, when I add it to a month, you can see that the currency formattings are happening for every line item that I add here. but the values are jumbled here. So I can just drag this here to the top so that I can see year, quarter, month, and date in a particular order. We make them compact form, then it will come one below the other like this. Year, quarter, month, and then the dates. So now I'm keen to work only with the monthly sales. So I'll create a small data now. So I'm going to uncheck the year, quarter, and the days here. Then I'll come back to my list here. I'll say report layout and show it because I've literally changed the entire output of the data. So we'll go back to normality again. Now I want to change the header also. So I'm going to go back to value field settings and I'm going to change the name. Remember, I cannot give the same source name here. If I try to do that and give an enter, it'll say the pivot table name fields are already exist because the source name is sales here. I cannot have the custom name also sales. Again, computer is found by us, so we can cheat the computer very easily. I'm going to just give a space extra at the last and give an OK. The system considers that as a sales space, so it's a new name to it on the custom name. But on the display part, I'll see only sales here.
Okay.
This is how I'll create the first logic called pivot table. But not everybody will like this view. Everybody will feel that right. Got a pivot table. That's fine. I cannot say that which month is big, which month is small. I have to literally see them by numbers to achieve it. To make my life a little more easier, I am going to create a pivot chart right now. Maybe somewhere over here. So to add a pivot chart, I will use Alt F1, which is the keyboard shortcut to achieve it. So now I'll place the cursor in the pivot table and I'm going to hit on Alt F1. You can see automatically it gives the chart. And by seeing the chart, I will definitely tell immediately that my highest sale is happening in the month of March. Maybe my second highest, I can tell them very clearly, but third, fourth highest are a little competitive here. By seeing a particular chart type, I may not be able to utter the right third place month here. So I can add the data point here. So now I'm going to do the corrections now. Once I've added the pivot table here, so now I'm going to name them. I can make them look better and best possible. So I'm going to just uncheck or delete all the unwanted data that I have here. And do some renamings here. Now I want to add these numbers on top of this data. So I'm going to just come back to the plus symbol on the right and add data label to my list. But when I have a larger data, then my data can be crammed by one another. So I want to make them look a little more easier. This is where I'm going to use the access pack. So instead of showing this in thousands here, I'm going to just go back to the format access and display the units in thousands. Okay. Then my data point will become very light and it's easy to read. But I will read them as like this as 41,000, 16.25,000, 20.95,000, 28.95,000, 27.73,000, and so on. Now I got my list better. So now if I change something in my pivot chart or pivot table, I can get the other things also coming up. So I'm going to add a quarter here. And now you can see that the quarter comes on the right. I want the quarter to be on the left so that the data will look nice here. So I'm going to come back to my field settings. I'm going to bring the quarter above the month. Now you can see that quarter 1 is this, quarter 2 is this, quarter 3 is this. I didn't do anything on the pivot chart. Whatever I made a change in the pivot table, my pivot chart automatically reflected it. Now I can go back or forward. So when I give a minus here, it shows you all the quarters for me. When I give a plus here, it goes all the months here. If I have further more data, probably it will go. But when I click here, nothing happens because I don't have the data drill down option in my pivot table. So I'm not going to give you that plus. So I can go back and forth here. I can find out the code wise list and month is. Because if this is a little bigger, that would be nice. But unfortunately, I don't know why pivot table kept plus or minus is kept as very smaller one. If that data is a little bigger, probably I can do something really, really well. So now, in my earlier part, I told you that we are going to have three different varieties here. So I want a pivot table and a pivot chart. Then finally, we need to have a slicer here. So how do I add a slicer here? So I can place anywhere because both the data are coming from one data part. So I can choose any one of the data here. Then I'll come back to my pivot table analysis on top and insert a slicer. Now the system asks you what is the slice that you're looking for. I want to go for months and quarters and even okay. Now you can see I have two different slices. So let me just drag this up, drag it here and put it somewhere over here. Make this here. Now I'm going to format the slicer also because the slicer is going like a scroll down point. I don't want a scroll down point and I have a lot of unselected or maybe a non-highlighted cells available here because these the data are not available in our chart here. So when I don't have data, I can remove them by giving a slicer settings and I'll say hide the items with no data. Then it will show only the items which has a data in it. Once the item fed with data, then it's going to give you the list for us. So now I can reduce this to a smaller one. And I can even make this much smaller than this. I want this in one line item. So once I click this, you can see one more line comes here called slicer on top. Click that and change this to a 3-column database. Now you can see it's automatically coming in a column. So now I want to color them nicely so that I can see them in different views. I'm going to go green. So now I got my quarters. Now in the same way, I want to make for the months also. So this is becoming really nice. Drag it here to the right. My pivot table, then add some colors. So now I got all my list here. So if I want to see the quarter one alone, I can just click this quarter one so that automatically you can see that the entire table, chart, and slices are changing. If you want
But
to
the
see the
numbers
other
in
way around,
slicer, sir?
sorry,
The numbers in slicer?
you can add numbers and sizes, but I didn't add it. I had added only the quarter months.
Okay.
So when I click the quarter two, you get to see quarter two is coming up and quarter three is coming up. When I don't want anything, I want to bring it back. I'll clear the line item here so you can see all of them back again. If you want to see the months alone, so I want to see Jan, then I want to see May, then I want to see September, then I'll click Jan, then I'll press the control button, click the May and September. Then only those data will come into play. And in the pivot table, I'm getting a lot of lines here. So I get Q1 and Q1 total, Q2, Q2. I don't want that total to come at the bottom. Then what I'll do is I'll come back to the pivot table here. I'll come to design and I'll see that grand total. And then I'm going to off the grand total everywhere. Or I can on the grand total for the row and column. I can see subtotals. I don't need it. So I'm going to remove the subtotals. So the data will look a little simpler, not that ecstatic or too much of a line will come into play. When I clear my months, let's get all these data. I try to add a quarter three. You will only see the overall quarters breakups there in thousands numbers coming on the pivot table, and you can see them on the pivot chart. So this is what the basic pivot table is. I started with the pivot table and see that it's a calculation of criteria. Then I just built the data manually. Then I came out with the keyboard shortcuts that I have here. And then when I come down to this point, then I create a pivot table and a pivot chart. I never name these guys or name them as slices.
Slicers.
So this will be a filter for us, and this allows us to do things really very better. This is pivot table, pivot chart, and slices.
Got it, sir.
This is basic. Not all the pivot tables will be so nice to see. Some pivot tables will be a little pathetic, or sometimes we will get data which is really unknown to us. If such situation comes into place, how do I deal that? So I need to showcase the entire data in a one single sheet, all of them in a chart with a slicer in it. So how do I build that? That's what I'm going to do right now. That's we call it as dashboard using a pivot table with an interaction in it. Because I'm having one table here, so one table doesn't make a big change or big sense here. When I change something here and there, it happens. But I want to see a larger data and prospects so that I can do something much better and much worthier than what it looks like. So let's see how to do this in a real-time data. Probably this data we would have saw at least once or twice. We have done this in a VLOOKUP, in a Rex lookup, everywhere we use this file. So I'm going to reuse the same file again so that we get to know a little bit about it so that we will not feel it is a little awkward for us to learn or identify what is that.
Okay.
So now I have a data which is little familiar for us. So we didn't do anything odd here, but we have seen this data now and then, but not completely like I'm about to show you right now. Let me show you how this data is going to work for me, and this is the data that I'm dealing with. So I'm going to move this to a new sheet so that I can create a pivot table out of it. And then I'll take this off, and then I'm going to call this as interactive dashboard using pivot table and other. So I'm going to use a pivot chart and as well as a slicer. I'm going to just say okay. Here we go. Now, if you see the number of line items that I have is around 1,999. This we would have used in our SUMIFs, COUNTIFs, everywhere. We would use the same functionality again and again and again. But this time, my approach or this time, my result orientation that I'm looking forward is a little different. So I have an agenda to follow here. I have an agenda here that is, I need yearly sales. What is the sales that I made every year? Then I want a regional sales. Then I want a sales rep by sales. Then I want a customer by sales. Then I want a product by sales. This is the agenda that I have at the moment with me. Now, in our earlier pivot table, in the basic pivot table, I have created my pivot table and I kept the data in the same sheet. Probably I'm not going to do that in here because this is a growing data because I have a lot of year continuously coming up here. All my years table starts on 2015 and until 21st of June 2020, all my data, all my sales line items are here. So this is going to grow. This table is going to grow only. It's not going to shrink anymore.
Okay.
So I wish to keep this raw sheet or the sheet one. I term it as a raw data. I'll keep them separately. I don't want to bring them into my pivot table sheet, and I don't want to make a mess of it. So whatever agenda that I'm about to create right now, it's better be in a new sheet. It's better be in a clean and clear sheet so that I can extend it. I can do whatever I want to do with it. So we know the drill right now. So if you want to create a pivot table right now, so we don't want to do anything very big. Just place the cursor in the data. The data is proper because we know the golden rules of pivot table here. So we need to have a header. I have a header. You should not have any blank headers. I don't have a blank headers. Even my data is continuous here, so I don't have a blank in between data also. So all my three checkbox that I need to check before I add a pivot table, all of them are here. So how this is going to work effectively? So how I'm going to build them one after the other. So once I build one part, the rest of them will fall apart and fall in place because I have to do one thing with utmost carefulness because I want to make sure the data looks really very nice. So what we're going to do right now is we are left in between without going further. We had a little break in between. So here, as I told you earlier, so I'm just going to work on the multiple pages as per the agenda. So I'm going to place the cursor in the invoice number and then I'm going to just come back to insert and add a pivot table. So you can see that when I go to pivot table, I have a new feature comes in place from Power BI desktop. So I can even create a pivot table connected to the Power BI data set. If I have any data set in my Power BI desktop or the Power BI data set, if I have any, so I can even do that. But I'm going to use a pivot table in here. I'm going to click this and see that it's asking you a question and it says that would you like to put them in a new sheet? As I told you earlier, this is going to be a growing data. So I don't want to add my pivot table somewhere on the right or left. I preferably put them in the brand new sheet. So I'm going to just add a new sheet to it. Here it automatically takes and shows you all the data that we saw in our previous pivot table, and I'm going to just rename them as yearly sales. And then drag it to the right. So I want to keep the raw data at the leftmost part and keeping my agenda data on the right.
Okay.
But if you closely watch in my pivot table field list, I have only one line called date. I don't have a year here. But my agenda says that I need a yearly sales to come up in place. So hope you remember when I talked about the basic pivot table, when I click the date field, it is going to give you the auto grouping component for you by default. If you are using pivot table after 2013 version or from 2013 version, if you click a date here, you will see an auto grouping. Now you can see the quarter and year is coming also immediately. I didn't do anything. I didn't do any grouping at all. Just gave a check mark on my data, and you can see that the quarters and the years are coming up properly. So now, as I told you, my agenda is only for the yearly sales, not for other dimensions. So I'm going to uncheck the date and quarter, and I get all my year-wise data part. Then I need a sale here. I'm going to give a check mark in the sales. I got all my sales as per the year. So now I got half a built pivot table is ready for me. So now I want to just do the corrections that is required for me. So to correct the first header row label, I will go to design, report layout and show in tabular form. That gives you fetches the name that is there available in my list. Yes, it's going to come out here, but I want to correct this line also. I don't want sum of sales. I'm going to give a right click here. I'll go to value field settings. In the value field settings, so first I'm going to change the custom name here. I'm going to call this sales and give a space. And I need even the rupee symbol in front of my numbers. So at the bottom of the screen, I can go to number format. I can either pick up a currency or accounting, whichever one you feel it is relevant to you. And if you don't want a decimal portion here because my sales are not happening in decimals, I can uncheck the decimal parts. If you keep the decimals, it will look nice. So when I give this and give an OK, you can see that now it gives you the list. So I got my pivot table and that's really nice. Now I want to add a header to my pivot table. So I'm going to just select these two cells and then come back to the merge cell. I'll call this as yearly. And I get bold and underline so that will be a header for people. Now I would like to add a chart here, but slicer I'm not going to add it here. So when I create my dashboard at last, I will do that. So I'm going to add a chart here, place the cursor here, give an Alt F1. That's going to give you the chart breaker for me. And then I'm going to do the corrections even in my chart. So when I come to the chart, I want to keep the chart as same. So I want the yearly sales sheet name is here. The yearly sales is the header of the pivot table. I want the yearly sales even for my pivot chart. So I'll place the cursor in total. I'll come to the formula bar and I'll give an equals and select this yearly sales and give an enter. Now, whatever I type in this cell right now, my name is referred to that cell references. So automatically you can get the names in here. Then I'm going to uncheck or I'm going to remove all the unwanted fields that I don't have or don't want in my sheet. Then I'm going to add the data label. And when I add it, it's going to embed top of one another as the numbers are very big here. So I'm going to come back to the left hand side. I give a right click here. I'll go to format access. And then I'm going to change this to millions. Now the data looks pretty neat. I have 17.24 million sales in 2015, and I have a average sales of 16.5 and above, and only half a year sales has happened in 2020 so far. So if the data is getting upgraded, automatically my sales will also be getting upgraded automatically. So until the half a year stage, I have achieved 8.57 million sales. This looks really very nice, and I'm good to go to the next agenda of my list. So I'll come back to the raw data. The agenda is the next is regional sales. So my cursor is in invoice, and then I come back to my insert. I have a table here, put it in a brand new sheet. Regional sales is what I require. Now I got the list. So first point is I'll go to design, report layout, and show in tabular form so that the heading will become regional sales. And place the cursor anywhere or select the whole column. It's up to you. Value field settings. Then I'm going to call this as sales and a space. And I want to go for the number format and select accounting and give an OK and an OK. Then I'm going to name them here and I'm going to call this as regional sales and make it bold and underline. And I want the name to be added. Copy this back to this list and paste it in the name also. Then drag it and keep it in there. So now you can see that I have the regional sales connected. So now I need a chart right now. So I'll place the cursor in one of the pivot table that I have here. I'll give Alt F1. So as usual, I got a chart here. But if you closely watch the color that I've used in the previous chart and this color is same. So I'm going to improvise that also. So I'm going to just come back to this point, delete unwanted fields, and keep the heading as the headers that I mentioned in my sheet. Add a data label to my data and change the data display to millions. Now finally I'm going to change the color also. So click the chart. So it selects the whole chart for me. I'll come to design and I'll come to change chart and I can pick up a color that I'm looking for. So now colorful palette 3 is what I'm using it. I have an orange here, so it's different. So I can see a difference in my chart here. This is my chart for the second agenda. So let's finish the other 3 agendas also. So I'm going to make it a little faster now. So as we have done all these 2 already. So the next agenda, I think I have agenda sales rep by sales. So I'm going to just add a sales rep by sales in here. Then design report layout showing tabular form, right click value field settings, sales space, numbering format, current or accounting, and then give an OK. Then name them as sales rep by sales, and bold, underline, and then merge the cell. Then add a chart to our list. Then remove all the unwanted fields. Then add the chart header, whatever I've added for the pivot table, and add our data label and convert this to millions. Then color them something else. So I'm going to use the design again, colorful lines, and this time I'm going to use a green, colorful palette 4. So now I got the next dimension also. So I have 2 more to go. So rename this. So I'll copy this, paste it here, give an enter. Add them to the last. And the next one is customer wise point. Again, insert pivot table, new sheet, customer wise sales, design, report layout, and show in tabular form, value field settings, sales and then space, number formatting, accounting, and okay. Then create a header here called customer wise sales. Make it bold and underline if you want to copy it and rename the sheet immediately. And then drag the sheet to the last and then place the cursor on the pivot table, give an Alt F1, remove the unwanted fields here and name the header of the chart what I named for the pivot table 2 and add a data label to it and then change the axis to millions. This will be a little clumsy because we have a lot of customers here, so I'm going to just make the chart a little bigger and change the color to a lighter mono palette. Yeah, I've used mono palette. This is not the same color that I have here, so it's a little different. Let me choose something else. I want to make it a little lighter. Yeah, I'll use mono palette. Now I got my one more to go. Come back to my data, insert pivot table, add the pivot table to a brand new sheet, and need a product wise sales. As usual, design, report layout, and show in tabular form. Change the value field settings, make the name as sales and a space, number formatting, accounting, and then give an OK to it. Then add the name to it called product by sales, make them bold and underline, copy the header, add it to our sheet. And then drag it at last. And then add a chart, remove the unwanted fields in the chart, add a header for the chart, add data to the chart, and make the data display as millions. Finally, change the color of the chart. Now we go back to monochromatic plate palette. Now I got all my list coming in here. Perfect. So now I got all my list one by one. You can see the previous page and you can see everything comes here. But I want all these charts to come in one page so that I can see all of them in one part. I don't want to travel or navigate to 5 sheets like this. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to create a new sheet called, put them at the last and call it as sales. Then I'm going to make some changes here. So I don't want this grids anymore because I'm going to show all the charts here, not the data here. So to change this display, I'm going to go back to the view and uncheck the grids here. Now you can see an ungraded Excel sheet and I'm going to add a header here. So I'm going to come back to first time I'm going to use a word art in Excel. So I'm going to call this as sales dashboard. This is way too bigger in size. Okay, I'm going to reduce the size a little lesser in here. And I'll bring that. I know what I'm bringing in right now. So now I'm going to move all my chart to this sheet so that I can put them in one particular order. So I'll come back to my yearly sales. I'll give a right click here. I'll go to move chart and I'm going to move the chart from the sales sheet to a dashboard. So now I got my dashboard coming up here. I can reduce the size a little bit so that as long as I can see all the figures very nicely, I can reduce the size to that smaller possible. The same way I'm coming back to regional sales, right click the chart, move the chart and move the chart to the last line, sales dashboard. Let's bring them here and make the height of the chart look similar. So I'll reduce the height and I can still see the data betterly. So now I'm going to move the next one, right click, move the chart, go to the last line, give an OK.
Can it be also copy pasted?
Copy paste is good, but again, copy paste is something which will have two data here. Then I'll have one in my sheet, one in there. I don't want them because anyway, the pivot table is still related to my chart here. So that's why I'm moving it instead of copy pasting it. Copy pasting is a little unwanted component here. That's why I'm moving it. Finally, I have a larger chart here. So let me keep them in this way itself. So scroll down here and give an OK. Bring it here. Let me put them across two charts here. And finally, I'm bringing in the final one. Last. So I'll make them perfect. So now I got all my charts. Again, this is not an interactive chart because I cannot make interactive here. So I just got all the data here. It shows all the year, all the region, all the sales rep, all the customer, all the product here. But I want to see this as an interactive dashboard. This is where my pivot table or the pivot chart doesn't make a big differences. The only difference that I'm going to make right now is add a slicer to it. That's going to make the filter look amazing here, and that makes my life even more easier. And if I give the data to somebody, they will see whatever they want. I don't want to create a storyboard for them separately in a new sheet and then make these components work for them. Instead, I'll just give them the dashboard to do whatever you want to do with the data. I'm done with it. So I can give something like that. But how do I do that? So I'm going to place the cursor in any one of the pivot table or pivot chart that I have here, and then bring all the slices. I can do one by one if I wanted to, but again, it's going to be a time consuming component. I will do the other way around to connect all these slices with all the charts. So I'm going to just come down to my pivot table chart analysis. I'll say insert. Then I have to bring here region, sales rep, customer, and product, and give an OK. Now I got all my slices coming up. Let me put them in one order so that I can see them very clearly. So I'm going to put the sales here, and I'm going to format that. Give a right click, go to the slices settings, hide the item which has no data in it, make them into 3 bricks. So my slicer has become smaller now, and I can color them also if I want. So I match the color with my chart so that I can see exactly what is what. The next point is the region. So I'm going to drag the region in here. And again, it's already small, so I'm going to make it a little more smaller. Slicer again, make it maybe 2 column, 3 column. 3 columns is a little tougher, so I'll make it as 2. Make it a smaller one. That's nice, and I'm going to bring the colors here. And the third one is sales rep. Okay, I'm going to bring the guy here. If I want, I can make it bigger. So again, it looks nice. So let me just bring this guy here. Make it a little smaller and make it double. Now I can just save some space here. So the sales rep comes with a green here. So I'm going to add a green. And the next one is customer. So customer, let the customer be here. I'll make it a little bigger. Let's see how long. Going too tall. I want to make them as 2 columns. And if I want to make them here, I can make it a little wider and shorter on top. Now I want to add the color to it. And finally, I'm going to bring the product here. Again, the data are a little clumsy here. That's fine. That's understandable. So I'm adding this. I can do some corrections later on. I can do that. So now I have to adjust them accordingly. Let me put the customer on top. So this is chart size. Then I'm going to bring this guy here, make it a little wider, make it as 3. Let's see. Yeah, this is nice. And then bring them here. And I think that I can make it as 4 or something like this here. Let me make it as 4. Yeah, this is also nice. Then I'm bringing this guy in here, expand this. I'll make it as 3 here. Okay, that's very nice. So I got all the data in here, and I can make this as 1 itself. Reduce the size here a bit, make it taller. And I'll make it like a aesthetic one, which allows us to touch all the 3 of it. Now I got all of them here. But when I move the cursor to the right or left, then I cannot see all my list. So I'm going to just reduce the size of the display a little less. So now we can see all of them here. But the problem that I will face right now is when I touch any one of the data, only changes that happens in the entire list. And when I click the customer name here, and you can see that only the first chart is changing, nothing else is changing. Because as you know that I got the charts or I got the slicer from the first chart.
Okay. But that's about only yearly sales, right? Hello.
Yeah.
Um.
Now I didn't make, because when I touch this, it goes to the yearly sales part alone. I don't see that it's happening for the other charts. When I touch something, when I say 2020 mobile, I should know what is the year-by sales on this list. So when I touch the yearly sales or when I touch any one of the product, I want the entire chart to go out.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So we're going to just make all the slices to connect with all the chart. At the moment, all my slices are connected only to one chart that is called year sales or yearly sales. So to make the slicer to work with all the other charts, I'm going to give a right click here. I have a line here called report connection.
Mm-hmm.
And in the report connection, the check is only there for the first pivot table. But I have 5 pivot tables here, so I'm going to check all the other pivot tables too. In the same way, I'm going to give a right click here, go back to the next slider and add the list here. Go to the next one, put connection, add all of them. Go to the next one, report connection, add all of them. And go to the next one, report connection, and finally add all of them. Now my interactive dashboard is ready to go forward. If I click any one of the slicer or any slicer, all my chart will change.
Okay.
My manager wants to see what is the sales that I made, or what is the sales that was done in 2015 alone on different region with a different sales representative with a different customer and different product. He will click the 2015 year alone. Now you can see the total sales done in 2015 was 17.24 million. The top 3 sellers or the top 3 revenue making cities are Coimbatore, Madurai, and Chennai. The top 3 revenue making sales reps are Raji, Mahi, and Achu. The top 3 products that I'm selling is Apple 7 Plus, and then Apple 6s Plus, and then Apple 7. The top customer I have in this list is Chennai Mobile is the number 1, and then the next component that I have here is Gadget, and then Panasonic Plaza are the three people. Oh, sorry, I made it other way around. So Chennai Mobile is number one, and Amazon is number two, and Panasonic Plaza is number three. I can sort them in the order the data is built here. Let me just try to sort them in a particular order. So let's see whether it's going to work for us. So I will sort the sales here. So if you right click here, I go to pivot. Here I can go for pivot chart area, or just try to sort them here. Sorting is not an option given to me in here. So now I have to just see how I can sort the data. So let me see whether I can normally sort it. So design, give you that formatting. Formatting is giving you only the sorting option or the coloring options a lot. Filter connection, there is no sort. It's available for me here. Okay, so I need to find a way to sort them here. So I can go for a text option. I have a sort. I can see the vertical bars and other parts, but I don't see a sort coming up here. I don't have sorting happens here. Don't have a sort here. Okay, why it is not giving you a sort component here? Okay, so I have to sort the data only in my pivot table. So let me just come back to my custom point, give a right click here, and then sort them by largest to smallest. So automatically my dashboard will show that list. So I can see the first top 10 point of this list. So I will sort them in all my list. I can see the sortings have happened. First, the data sorted here. So when I remove the filters out of the list, my sorting still remains same.
So can you show that how the sorting was done?
I just gone to my product table. I gave a right click here. Then I sort that the largest to smallest value in all the fields. And again, I didn't do that in the sales here because sales comes as per the list here. If you want to sort this also, you can do that. So that even the sales, but again, sales has to come in one order. Even the sorting will not change much here. The sorting is happening only in the pivot table, not in my charts here. At other fields, I can see the sorting has happened properly.
Yeah.
Now, if I choose any other product, so I'm going to choose Apple 7 Plus. You see the total sales that I did in Apple 7 Plus was 28.23 million. My sales was phenomenal in 2016. Now you can see the sorting is happening in my year sales.
Yeah.
And then you can see the top three places is Chennai, Coimbatore, Madurai, and Chennai, Hema, Alagu, and Raji, Surya Mobile, Flipkart, and Amazon, and so on. So now we can just pick up what you want here. Whatever you want, you can pick all of them in this list. That's going to give you a list of what we are looking at. So this is the way we build an interactive dashboard in. Can we go for one more, or is it too much for you for this for today?
We can go for one more, sir.
Lighter one or heavier one?
Lighter one will be good.
Okay. So with this, our pivot table comes to an end. But we can make a pivot table a much more productive one if we want to.
Okay.
For example, my pivot table I'm going to make one more dimension here. That is, I want to see how the sales are going on an average. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to add one dimension here. So I'm going to just say show field list. I'm going to bring the sales one more time in the sales value. Again, if I want the same value twice, the tick and check will not work for me. I have to go back to the old method, drag and drop. If I'm using the same field more than once. If I'm using only once, I don't have a problem in handling it. I can do them very clearly and very easily by giving a check mark there. But when I want the same field to be repeated more than once in my list, I have to be a little careful, and that's why I have used the drag and drop option on the second point. On the first point, I don't use them. I'm okay with that. The second part, I'm doing this. So now I've added this. I'm going to change this to a percentage of sales. I'm going to give a right click on the second field, show the values as per the grand total percentage. And I want to change the header here called percentage changes. And you can see that my percentage changes are not happening way too much. It's hovering over of 18% and so on. Now I've added another field. So when I go back to my sales dashboard, you will see there is a small percentage lines coming up at the bottom. And you see 0% are coming up. So I want to make the data look better. So I'm going to come down to the chart and go to the pivot chart analysis. Or I'll go to the format or the design component and change the chart type. I don't want the column chart anymore. I'm going to go back to combo chart and I'm going to see like this. Okay. But I have too much of numbers coming up here, so I will do the alterations as I go forward. I'm going to give an OK. So I have too much of information in one part. I want to bring the percentage to the bottom, and then I can click this, come to data label, and then I can set the list. But again, I have way too much of information here. And I'm going to click this, change the data label. And I want to make this data look much more better. So I'm going to change this blue to some other color. So that I can see the data also clearly, plus the percentages on top. I just included one more dimension to my data by just adding one more column here. I can do this for all the chart, but again, it will become too clumsy here because I'm already having a larger data here. I don't want to really mess furthermore with this point. But if you add this in all the dimensions, it looks really very good. It will be different in a normal sense that we have here. So when I change this to this, you can see how this is changing. And you can see that the percentage is going to flap out and it's going to show you a lot of list here. You can see how the map talks a lot when I add a dimension here. Map does the work beautifully for me, and I can just see that how it's underlining my sales and how sales have been worked out throughout the period. I can see them all really very clearly. The charts are too small to see here, so that's why it's not giving me the edge that I'm looking forward for. But again, on a dashboard, what I'm trying is way too much. I should have done that on a separate singular dashboards, not much.
Okay.
So this is how we
But again,
play around
singular
with.
one, we cannot see all the chats, right?
Yes. In a singular part, what I can do is when I want to create a storyboard here, on the storyboard part, I can do things better. I can make the data work even more better, but I'll show something like this. I'll show this separately in here. I would have used the copy paste option that you have suggested me earlier and do the adjustments here. But when I come to this data, I will use the first data only. But again, when I make a change to the sheet will have the reflections over here also. So I don't want to do a lot of things in one chart when it is very small, because it's way too much to read and way too much to handle.
Okay.
So this is how we will deal with an interactive dashboard in Spider. If you have any query, you can ask me. Else tomorrow, how you are situated? Are you available for a class? Tomorrow is Sunday.
Yes, sir. Tomorrow we
If you are
can.
available, let me know. So we will definitely do it. If you are not available, no problem. We
I
can
will
continue
just
this.
let you know by second half of the day by today, if
Take
possible.
your own time. No hurry. You can do that. Yes. Okay. With this, I'll
Okay.
end a session today. Tomorrow we are starting our Power Query and Power Pivot. I thought of doing it all in one day, but again, this itself took an hour and a half for us.
Yeah.
I don't want to really smoke your brain today, so let me smoke it tomorrow.
Sure, sir.